Shadow Mountain Publishing is probably best known for our middle grade fantasy series, Fablehaven and Dragonwatch, and our empathy building titles. Our children's books are all clean content, which for us means no violence, no drugs, and no foul language. But our characters don't live in some utopian world of goodness. They have problems as they try and navigate growing up. They cope with loss, endure economic hardship. Sometimes they do dumb things and face the consequences of their mistakes. And they face hard challenges in both the real world and the fantastical worlds of our writers' imaginations. Brandon Mull is the best-selling author of the Fablehaven and Dragonwatch series. In March, we'll publish Carnival Quest, the long-awaited series finale to the Candy Shop War, where magical candies give kids superpowers to fight a family of evil magicians. So liquid licorice, for example, lets the eater change their body anywhere on the spectrum between solid and liquid, so you can stretch and fit through any opening that water could get through. There's a lot of whimsy in this series, as you'd expect from Brandon Mull, and since it takes place in a carnival, there's also a lot of scary elements, with a particular emphasis on creepy clowns. Coming in August is the first ever official Fablehaven cookbook, wondrous recipes inspired by the characters from the series. Each recipe includes a brief description on how it relates to the Fablehaven story. All the essential ingredients to make every recipe in this cookbook is located in the front of the book in a section called Caretaker's Pantry, and it will feature an original short story by Brandon Mull. Coming in March from J. Scott Savage is the debut of the series Grayson Fox, School Treasure Hunter. He's a fedora-wearing fifth-grade adventurer in the spirit of Indiana Jones, who navigates a maze of old textbooks, battles menacing school rats, and climbs a mountain of discarded desks in order to find a long-lost chest of toys which were confiscated in school over a period of many decades. And as such, there are many retro references like Pokemon, rare comic books, Rubik's Cubes, and old-school gadgets that amused bored students in yesteryear. This author is also the writer of Mysteries of Cove, a steampunk series where real dragons battle it out against ingenious mechanical dragons, fashioned using only the steam-powered, ironclad, gear-moving technology of the 19th century. Also by this author, and new this month, is the Lost Wonderland Diaries Book 2, Secrets of the Looking Glass. The series is inspired by Alice in Wonderland books, the one book the author says he loves the most, is intrigued by, and the story stays with him. He's not trying to capture Lewis Carroll, but to have the same magical, whimsical wordplay. It's an example of how great art can inspire entirely new creations. The premise is two kids find the lost diaries of Lewis Carroll in their local library, and that opens a portal back to Wonderland, where all the familiar characters like Humpty Dumpty and Tweedledee and Tweedledum are now monstrous. The protagonists, Celia and Tyrus, represent two elements of Carroll's work, namely that logic and imagination must work together to solve problems. The Questmaster's Trap is book 2 in the Champions Quest series and is just out this fall. It's about a bunch of kids who see a weird curiosity shop in town, and the window display proves far too tempting. So they go in to explore, and that transports them straight into a role-playing game, something like Dungeons & Dragons, where they have to overcome their real-world vulnerabilities to outwit and outplay their game foes. The main characters represent a wide range of life experiences, like living in foster care. This author, Frank L. Cole, says he wanted to have a character in the series who struggles with panic attacks, as he does, and to show how the character is fighting through that by finding ways through teamwork, through making friends, and through embracing a leadership role. He hopes kids have one main takeaway from his books, which is that life can be hard, but it can also be great. McCall Hoyle is the author of Stella, which is currently nominated for 8 state awards, and she has a new title coming out in April about a dog friend of Stella's in the book Just Gus. Gus was rescued after being abused as a puppy and trained as a livestock working dog, protecting his sheep and chickens from predators like fox and coyotes. One day, Gus confronts a bear, and in fearlessly protecting his flock, injures his leg, making it impossible to continue his important work. He's placed with a family and meets Diego, who struggles with social anxiety, which limits his ability to speak, and he has to attend school online. Gus realizes Diego needs a friend as much as his sheep needed a protector, but in order to stay with his new family and succeed in his new job, Gus has to learn to control his instincts, like barking and patrolling the neighborhood. This is a young reader's adaptation of The Paper Daughters of Chinatown. It's based on the true story of Chinese girls and young women who were tricked into coming to America in the late 19th century, who landed in San Francisco using forged papers and were compelled to face lives of brutal servitude by unscrupulous gangs. This adaptation follows the story of Tae Choi, who at age 6 is being sent on a boat, she believes, to visit her grandmother, but her impoverished father has sold her. Alone and afraid, she realizes she is headed to San Francisco and is forced to go by a new name listed on her paper documents to start her hard new life as a servant in a gambling den. The story mostly takes place when Tae, now called Tien, is age 12, as she perseveres through her ordeal until she meets Dolly Cameron, with whom she forges a powerful friendship and the hope of a chance for freedom and eventually finding a new purpose in helping hundreds of immigrant women from China regain their lives and assert their long-denied legal and human rights. These are two recently published Young Readers editions by author Cameron Wright. Both are based on true stories and both have locations in Southeast Asia. The Orphan Keeper is the story of a boy in India who is kidnapped off the street and sold to an orphanage, eventually being adopted by an unsuspecting American family who don't know his family is still alive. He thrives in America, and due to a series of incredible coincidences, he gets additional clues to his past, which lead him back to India in search of his birth mother. This edition includes a Dear Young Reader letter from the man whose life the book is based, Taj Rowland. The Rent Collector is about a woman who scratches out basic subsistence by finding recyclables and things which could be repaired and sold from a garbage dump where she lives in Cambodia. In the book it says all her possessions could be held in her two hands. She is taught to read by the woman who is the rent collector and begins to realize the world is so much bigger than the dump, and as the women read together, they begin to understand each other, showing the power of literacy to empower and connect people. Virtually Me is a new middle grade title from the writing team behind the best-selling and state award-winning titles Mustaches for Maddie, Squint, and Willa and the Whale, Chad Morris and Shelley Brown. It takes place in a post-pandemic world where kids who would have social challenges in in-person school opt for a new virtual reality academy, thinking this is a dream come true. Avatars represent them in this 3D virtual reality environment, so they go to class, they mingle in hallways, and the book follows several students who each have a different reason to want to avoid in-person school, and we explore through their eyes whether they can, in fact, get a fresh start and avoid the conflicts that made in-person school such a struggle. Coming next spring by this same writing team, The Wild Journey of Juniper Berry is a middle grade fish out of water tale about a nature-loving girl raised off the grid in a cabin in the woods who relocates to the city when her brother needs medical care. To help pay the family's medical bills so they can move back home, Juniper starts posting videos filled with things she's learned from observing animals and nature. Kids at school start to share her videos to make fun of her, but the posts go viral as viewers appreciate her wisdom and begin to see the world from a fresh perspective. Here's a look at some recent empathy-building titles. Trusting True North takes place during a pandemic, as True reasons with all the adults so distracted by the virus, she must figure out how to resolve all her problems by herself as they unfold right along with the health crisis. The Legend of the Dream Giants is told in text and graphic novel-style illustrations and is the story of Berg, a lonely and misunderstood orphan giant whose mother comes to him in dreams to comfort and guide him. Real is based on the true story of one of the co-authors, Peyton Goddard. It's about a girl with non-speaking autism who wants to go to public school and must overcome the challenges and objections of students and their parents who don't understand autism and want her sent away to a special ed school. New this spring is a picture book about how a father's love for his daughter is joyfully expressed during their nightly routine when he braids her hair and shares imaginative and empowering bedtime stories in Only a Trentha Away. In one story, Gia's braid becomes a sturdy, twisted vine that she uses to bravely swing through a jungle. In another, her braids are jump ropes as she catches the beat to play double dutch with the best players in the neighborhood. This book was written by Nadine Fonseca, who is the founder of Mighty Kind, an educational multimedia company for families that aims to use teaching kindness as a bridge to anti-racist learning. It features an author's note sharing the history of braids in Latinx culture, as a way to facilitate social connection and show cultural and artistic expression. Ming's Christmas Wishes is a story about the Chinese immigrant experience in Northern California in the 1930s, as Ming is torn between the American culture she's grown up in and loves, but where she faces open bigotry, and her mom's insistence on maintaining a traditional Chinese culture at home. She feels like she doesn't quite belong in either world until Pops takes her to see important symbols of her Chinese heritage from generations ago, and she comes to realize that all cultures have cherished symbols to celebrate. This is a great title to better understand the wounds of past injustices, to explain our current racial divisions. Let me quote the caption from the illustration on the bottom. This is Pops speaking to Ming. I was 14 when I came from China. I worked with my father in San Francisco. When there was trouble, he brought me to this mountain. Here, he said, we are not foreigners. Here we are men, a small part of nature's greatness. This is a new fall holiday title and a great pick for middle graders. It's a unique collection of the most beloved Christmas carols, from the warmly nostalgic to the majestically solemn and uplifting. It presents both the lyrics and the fascinating stories and interesting facts behind the creation of the songs. Each entry deepens our understanding of the music and enhances our appreciation of why these songs are culturally important and dearly treasured. Each chapter features a QR code to a link to watch or listen to a performance of the carol. Let me briefly mention 2 new upcoming young adult titles. Journal entry, Heading to School. I know what everyone will say. There goes the girl who tried to kill herself. This is the premise of Swimming in a Sea of Stars, a novel about teen mental health issues, particularly teens struggling with depression and suicidal ideation, with an emphasis on how healing and hope can come from small acts of kindness, and as such, every person can matter. Beauty Reborn is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, about healing from the trauma of emotional and sexual abuse through the lens of a well-known fairy tale. The story implies sexual abuse, but the incident is not explicitly described, and the story explores the difficulty of learning to trust again, as well as noting that the road to empowerment is an ongoing journey, not a simple happily ever after ending. The author, Elizabeth Loham, draws from her own experience as a sexual abuse survivor and identifies in the story the red flags associated with a manipulative and/or abusive relationship. Ebook review copies are available on Edelweiss and NetGalley, and on Edelweiss I keep EARCs available past pub date. Our titles are sold as ebooks on all popular platforms. Thank you, and feel free to reach out to me directly for any product information at ilevine@shadowmountain.com.